following special report is an extract from the June 7th Monthly Exopolitics Live Briefing.
All right, so my top story for the last 4 weeks, the last month, is the claims that the Galactic Federation of Worlds leadership was involved in a disclosure betrayal. Now, this was based on an interview I did with Dr. Andrea Martin, who is a very credible person. I mean, that doesn't prove that everything she said is true, but she has credibility she has a PhD. She taught at Worcester University in Massachusetts for 19 years. And she also recalls having had experiences in some classified programs, military abductions, where she was abused, where her telepathic abilities there was an attempt made to weaponize these by the Raytheon Corporation. So these are things that happened in her childhood that she remembers. But more recently, in 2023, she began to start talking about the Galactic Federation of Worlds and how that was an organization that her former husband or current husband, however you want to frame it, from the Pleiades had enrolled. That she claims that she and her husband Ika were in the Pleiades when they enrolled in something called the Envoy program. And those of you that are familiar with the work of Milena Danan, you know that the Envoy program is something that she says that she was involved in with Thorhan Aredian. So Andrea Martin says that she and her husband were involved in the Envoy program. She came to Earth and decided to do a walk-in where she would grow up in Earth conditions, and that her husband from the Pleiades would watch over her, and he would serve with the Galactic Federation of Worlds, and that he was part of an extraterrestrial contingent that would work with the US military. And we know that has been going on because JP has been reporting on that. And I mentioned earlier where he was given a briefing on the Pacific Space Arc, and on one side of the room were 40 Nordic extraterrestrials wearing Air Force uniforms, crew cuts and all of that, so that they would blend in. That apparently Ika is part of one of those extraterrestrial contingents. Probably not the same one that JP encountered at Eglin Air Force Base. According to Andrea Martin, Ika is stationed out of Cheyenne Mountain in Colorado. So what kind of supports her radical claims? Because this is the key, is like, well, is there any truth to her claims that the Galactic Federation of Worlds leadership has decided to make agreements with the new power structures or the old power structures, which have been kind of purged of the black hats? Let's just say, there's been a struggle. Everyone has been hearing about it, the white hats and the black hats, and the stories that Joe Biden was executed in 2020, that he was part of the black hat operation. Apparently this has been going on for some time now throughout the Biden administration and into the current Trump administration, that black hats have been removed from the scene and executed or imprisoned, or they've just fled to New Zealand or to some place in the South Island there, for refuge or whatever. That black hats have been removed. Now, what happens is, okay, you get rid of these black hats, you get rid of the people that were involved in satanic ritual abuse, pedophilia, the blackmail of major politicians, doing all of these nefarious things to control the planet, to control the political and military institutions that run our planet. So you get rid of those black hats. Okay, so you got rid of them. Okay, so these are the bad guys. You got rid of them. So who's left? Well, you have a whole lot of people that are involved in major corporations, pharmaceutical industry, the banking cartels, the oil industry, very powerful people that benefit, or their companies benefit from the status quo. And they are the ones that control the kind of major political and military institutions in the United States and all over the world, who are meeting with and making agreements with the Galactic Federation of Worlds, which is a military organization. So overall, I mean, to just kind of cut to the point, ultimately, the Galactic Federation of Worlds leadership made agreements with the leadership of the so-called white hats, who in fact are now influenced to a major degree by major kind of major corporations. Now, that doesn't mean that the white hats are all corrupted. I think that there are elements of the white hats, say, for example, the Space Force and the Space Command in the United States, that I think, and from what I've heard, are very clean and want to do the best by humanity. But when it comes to the leadership, the ultimate leadership, the ones that are making agreements, according to the information from Dr. Martin and Ika, agreements were reached with the Galactic Federation, whereby the galactic threat in the form of Draco-reptilian Orion Greys influencing our planet or controlling our planet has been eliminated. And so now agreements can be made to kind of like chart a future course for our planet. And that future course was very much influenced by the existing power structures in the pharmaceutical, oil industry, banking cartels to kind of maintain a lot of the status quo, or to slow walk the disclosure process. So the question we all have to ask ourselves is, well, is this true? Is Dr. Martin relaying accurate information from her former husband in the Pleiades? Or is she delusional and just making it up and appropriating information from others, such as Elena Danaan, which I know there's a lot of people out there that think that? Well, if that's the case, let's look at circumstantial evidence. Is the UFO disclosure process being slow-walked, as Ika claims? Okay, so let's look at what the circumstantial evidence tells us, or what is happening around the planet at the moment. Because to my mind, this is critical. As an exopolitical observer for close to 25 years now, yeah, it's been that long, I would say that the ultimate test for anyone making any claims about extraterrestrial life is, do those claims match with current conditions and events on Earth? Because I believe the Hermetic principle applies: as above, so below, as within, so without. Because the Earth truly is a microcosm of the macrocosm, that many, many sources tell us that. That's the reason why there have been so many different extraterrestrial species, 22, that have seeded our genetics, because we would become a kind of an experiment that could be observed in terms of how to solve galactic-wide problems, that we were an experiment set up to solve galactic problems. So there's multiple sources that have talked about that. Alex Collier has talked about that, so I don't want to go into that. But the Earth is a microcosm of the macro. So that means that if things, the big picture, if things are happening out there, then they're going to be mirrored in what's happening on the Earth. Now, there are claims that the Draco-reptilian Empire is being defeated, and the Galactic Federation of Worlds is kicking ass in the Draco constellation, taking over their home world and so forth. Does that match with events on Earth? Do we see anything on planet Earth that mirrors that? Have the black hats been defeated openly by the white hats? Have all the secrets come out in a great victory over the evil empire? No, it hasn't. It hasn't happened. So I do question that scenario. So what does that mean then? I think what we are seeing around us is a lot of evidence that the disclosure process is official disclosure. And I want to emphasize that official disclosure is going backwards, that there are clear signs that official disclosure is going backwards because the new black hats, there's a song, I think, with The Who that says, meet the new boss, same as the old boss. Okay, all right. So I think in the new boss in town, those that run the cartels, the banking, the fossil fuel industries, the pharmaceuticals, that are in control of the lobby groups that control the US Congress and the presidency and so forth, they're the ones that are putting pressure on political leaders to make agreements with extraterrestrials that maintain the status quo. So there hasn't been a brilliant victory here. It has been compromise. And part of that compromise is that the official disclosure process is being slow walked, which is what Ika suggested. And so is the circumstantial evidence supporting that? Well, here's some examples that I think signify exactly that. Efforts to pass a comprehensive UAP Disclosure Act in 2024 were significantly gutted, and that the effort to pass the original version in 2025 got nowhere. So the UAP Disclosure Act, that was a white hat initiative. They wanted to get that up and out there. There was an effort to test the waters to see if there was support for that. That didn't get anywhere, and eventually it was gutted. And that an attempt to get a 2025 version adopted by the Senate, or at least included in the Senate's version of the National Defense Authorization Act for 2026, that's getting nowhere. The All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, which was set up to study UFO reports, to interview whistleblowers, and to reveal that information to the general public, that's become a gatekeeper. Whistleblower testimonies are not being publicly released. It is actually doing the opposite of what the original intention was. The US Congress is making only piecemeal progress in getting new whistleblowers to testify in classified briefings and to hold public hearings. As I mentioned in the case of David Grush a little bit earlier, the US Congress, in particular, a small group of representatives in the House of Representatives, they formed something called a UAP caucus, but they have not made any real progress. Well, they've attempted to put together a new public hearing, but that has not happened yet. It's been set back, and their attempts to get information about classified UFO crash retrieval programs have not been fruitful. Efforts to create a UAP select congressional committee have been stopped by leaders. So there was an effort by these members of the US House of Representatives to set up a select committee on UAPs, but House leaders said, no, there's not enough support for that. So that is important. Official UFO disclosure has been blocked. And there's more circumstantial evidence. So let me read out this article extract that I think kind of summarizes what is going on. So Ika says, everything you see is carefully curated. All of the flyovers, all of the ships, all of the government ships, all of the off-planet ships, all of the orbs, all of these so-called finds that are being released are all carefully curated. None of these are authentic. You are being held as birds in cages, even though your cages are simply being made larger. That is all that is happening. Okay. That is very disturbing. If that is true, that all that's happening is that we're being fed a few breadcrumbs where our views about UFOs and extraterrestrial life are expanding a little bit, but the structures that control our lives have not changed. So we are still in a cage, just the cage has grown a little bit. So Ika goes on. You need to understand that what they have told you about drip or soft disclosure was for your own safety, was to prevent chaos on Earth. Well, this is partially true. It was enacted and crafted with evil intent, with greed. Okay, that's interesting, because what he's saying here is that those doing these negotiations that ultimately agreed on a drip or soft disclosure to protect the humanity, prevent chaos on Earth, that they didn't have humanity's best interests at heart at all. They knew that the power structures on this planet were not going to fall. And honestly, it was not even in their interest or field of vision, so to speak, of the, we'll just call them councils, right, to ever dismantle those systems. So we call them councils. He's referring to the councils running the Galactic Federation of Worlds and other groups, that the leaders of the Galactic Federation of Worlds, they knew this, that they knew that the power structures on the planet hadn't fallen, that sure, you got rid of some bad guys, but the new boss is the old boss, same as the old boss, as the WHO said or saying. And I think this is very significant, that we understand that the power structures remain on the planet and deals have been made, because ultimately the Galactic Federation of Worlds is a military organization and it wants allies. Okay, so it wants allies. It wants humanity to join it in these operations in outside of our solar system to take on extraterrestrial bad guys. Now, I think that there are battles, galactic battles out there that are happening. I am skeptical that the Draco reptilian homeworld has been overtaken, as I said, because if it had been, I think we would have seen evidence in real life Earth events. But nevertheless, there are real space battles happening out there. The Draco reptilians, as many whistleblowers and secret space program witnesses have described, is a real threat out there. And so the Galactic Federation, they want allies. This is something that William Tompkins talked about. He's a former aerospace engineer who worked with the Douglas Aircraft Company, and he was involved in the design of the initial space carriers and space cruisers that would become part of the Navy's Solar Warden program. And he said back then in the 1950s and 1960s that the Nordics, aka the Galactic Federation of Worlds, that they wanted allies in the struggle against the Draco reptilian empire. So I think that has been the focus of the leadership of the Galactic Federation of Worlds, whereas the personnel in the Galactic Federation, they were more interested in ending the suffering of humanity. Okay, so here's some more circumstantial evidence supporting this. Now, the Sol Foundation, this is one of those newer UAP organizations that's been set up. And if you go to its website on the home page, it says Science, Policy and Public Education for the Post-UAP World. So it's been set up as something that will kind of like make it possible to introduce the UFO idea to working professionals. And it says the Sol Foundation brings together experts from academia and government to address the philosophical, policy and scientific problems raised by the likely presence on the Earth of UAP. Okay, so this is an organization that has received some significant funding to be able to push the narrative that I consider and others consider to be a limited hangout. That is, UFOs are real, but we don't know what they are, but they are a national security threat. And there are reports of UFO crash retrieval operations. So that is all part of a limited hangout where you're revealing some of the truth, but not all of the truth. Now, this organization, it was being purged on Wikipedia, which I think is a real sign that what we have here is efforts to kind of roll back or slow walk the UFO disclosure process, as I've been saying, that this is something that is very, very real. So all of this ultimately supports what Andrea Martin has been saying or relayed from ICA, that there is a set of agreements that have been reached whereby the leadership of the Galactic Federation and those representing the Earth in the negotiations have reached agreements, and that those agreements involve the slow walking of the disclosure process, and that refers primarily to official disclosure. So there's not going to be official disclosure soon. But that's not all bad news. I mean, what I pointed out in an article, in my article where I analyzed Andrea Martin's information, I pointed out that even though official disclosure is being slow walked and we can't expect that to move forward anytime soon, and some of the advanced technologies that were promised, free energy, kind of like med beds, alternative financial institutions, alternative financial systems are not going to come forward because the power structures don't want them to come forward at this stage, because they say that there will be chaos on Earth if these things were released, and that that will maximize human suffering, and so the Galactics don't want that. But the good news is, and I think this is one of those situations where you're making lemonade out of a lemon, even though official disclosure is not happening, and the release of the advanced technologies is not going to be happening anytime soon. Extraterrestrial contact is going to happen at an individual level, that there's going to be an uptick in that's the good news here, that more and more of us that are starseeds, that are wanting to have contact with extraterrestrials, we're going to have contact, and that is going to begin this month, according to the information from Ika and Dr. Martin, and over the next 12 months. I mean, they were predicting, and this is a prediction, so take it for what it's worth. Many people make predictions, and many of them don't work out, especially when you give time limits. So, whether it's 12 months, whether it's 2 years, 3 years, we don't know. But I think it's kind of like what they're saying is that we're going to have physical contact. Okay, so let's move on now. All right, so the exopolitics perspective, let's take a look at the Ukraine-Russia war, just some recent developments there. President Putin, he was subjected to an assassination attempt. So his helicopter was at the epicenter of a Ukrainian drone strike. So that's quite an escalation right there. So who's trying to escalate the war in Ukraine? Why would you try to assassinate the president of a nuclear state, a powerful nuclear state like Russia? Why would you do that? I mean, imagine if they had succeeded and shot down Putin, who in many ways is a master diplomat and has taken a very legalistic approach. Imagine if he was replaced by someone that was much more militaristic. I mean, NATO, that I think was undoubtedly involved in this, would suddenly find Russian missiles crashing into London and Berlin, because they have been involved, their intelligence services have been involved at the highest level in staging things like this, and the United States under the Trump administration has been pulling back. But how would the United States respond if all of a sudden Russian missiles are crashing into London and Berlin in retaliation for the assassination of their president? It would not have been good. We could have gone into a nuclear war. This is really, really dangerous. We've got to pay attention to this. Who the fuck is trying to start a nuclear war with Russia? I mean, Keep that in mind. I mean, if all the bad guys have been taken away, imprisoned, if the Draco reptilians have been taken off the planet and their home world has been invaded and taken over by the Galactic Federation, who the fuck is trying to assassinate the leader of Russia to start a nuclear war? I mean, that should make you angry. It makes me fucking angry. Bloody hell, who's doing this? It is a deep state element that is still here. They're pulling the strings, and they're pulling the strings of those making the negotiations with the Galactic Federation of Worlds. So don't give me this hopium that everything is good. It's not. This is bloody bad. Okay, let me move on. Russian nuclear bombers attack. Again, look, I mean, who the F is doing this? They got the Ukrainian, they supplied Ukraine with drones and satellite telemetry to attack Russian nuclear bombers that are displayed in the open because that's required under the START Treaty with the United States, that the United States and Russia have something called the START Treaty, the Strategic Arms Reduction Talks, where part of the agreement is that their strategic nuclear bomber fleets have to be displayed in the open so that both sides can see what's going on through satellites. That's part of a nuclear agreement to prevent a nuclear war between Russia and the United States. So, and these idiots in NATO that are controlled by the deep state, and I think it's Europeans, the European deep state is still there trying to start this. And these are people working out of London, out of Berlin, that they're trying to start this, and they gave the Ukrainians everything they needed to bomb Russia's strategic nuclear force. Bloody hell. Again, trying to start a nuclear war with Russia. And Russia would have been entitled to respond to this in a very deliberate way by staging or by sending missiles to those behind that. And that is the intelligence services in London, MI6, and in Russia, their intelligence services that are working with the Ukrainians to do all of this. But thankfully, Putin is alive and has kind of restrained the Russians from not doing that, and instead they are like bombing the hell out of the Ukrainians. But they know that these NATO states, the United Kingdom and Germany and France, I shouldn't leave the French out of this because they're bloody bastards also trying to start a war with Russia, that their governmental officials or their deep state is trying to start this war. So, okay, very, very serious news. And okay, so now what is happening in the battlefield of Ukraine and Russia? What the hell is going on there? Well, there have been a lot of stories about these Ukrainian US biolabs. So there have been a lot of sources talking about up to 46 US military-funded biolabs in Ukraine where they were doing all kinds of genetic experiments, and these are unknown. Now, there have been a number, if you do Ukraine biolabs in Google or DuckDuckGo, you'll get a whole bunch of kind of like official news sources debunking all of this, saying, there's no such thing as US-funded biolabs in Ukraine, that it's all conspiracy theory, we walk them, forget about it and all of that. That's the standard response by the mainstream media. But alternative news sources have been able to confirm that these biolabs do exist. So what's going on in them? And how is that related to the Ukrainian war? And how is the deep state involved in all of that? Okay, well, I think that the truth is hidden in plain sight. This is how the deep state operates. You hide the truth in plain sight through things such as movies. So here you have a movie that recently came out on Apple TV. If you haven't watched it, I recommend that you watch it. It's called The Gorge. And in it, you have these bioengineered super soldiers whose genetics are a blend of human and animal and plant genetics. Just the kind of stupid stuff they were doing in Atlantis that led to their demise, 12,000 years ago. They're doing that now in Ukraine, in the biolabs down there. They're in the movie The Gorge. It shows these bioengineered super soldiers, that these were created in secret biolabs in an undisclosed area. We're not told what it is, where it is, where this gorge is. We can only guess. It appears to be somewhere in Eastern Europe, and I think it's hiding the truth in plain sight. It is Ukraine. This movie represents these biolabs in Ukraine that were creating super soldiers. Now, the movie was released in February 2025, only a few months ago. And so what I believe has been going on for the last 3 years of the Russia-Ukraine war is that they have been testing these super soldiers that are created out of these biolabs in areas of Ukraine against the Russian army in the Ukraine-Russia war. I think that's what's been going on, which explains why Russia, even though it's a much bigger and much more powerful country, has been making only piecemeal progress against the Ukrainians. And I know the Ukrainians are very good soldiers, but I think that part of the reason why the Russians have been making very slow incremental process is because the Ukrainians are using super soldiers manufactured in these deep state facilities against the Russians, and so the Russians are staying back and just using artillery. Otherwise they would lose a lot of soldiers. Okay, well, that's it. So I hope to see you again soon at the George Kavasilis and the Sarah Bressman panel discussion of Dilemma of a Star Trek Future. And thank you and aloha.
You have been listening to Exopolitics Today with Dr. Michael Salla. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe to this channel. Join or start a conversation in the comments. Take the time to explore the vast library of best-selling books, webinars, and podcasts by Dr. Salla. Visit exopoliticstoday.com.